All right, welcome to another deep dive. This time we're going deep with Haruki Murakami, specifically Norwegian Wood. This was a listener request and we are so here for it. I think you'll find it really fascinating how this book dives into the whole experience of love and loss.
Yeah.
The stuff we can all probably relate to.
Yeah, and it's really the novel that I think you could say launched Murakami onto the global scene. I mean, this is Murakami at, like, his most personal, many would say. So we're dropped right into 1960s Japan, a time of some serious, like, social and political upheaval.
You'd think that'd be like the main focus, right?
Mhm.
But Murakami kind of sidesteps all that external drama. He's more interested in this really intimate look at what's happening inside his characters.
And that's what makes Norwegian Wood so powerful, so, like, affecting, you know? It's not about the big historical stuff. It's about these individuals figuring out their own lives with that stuff as a backdrop. It's how they find meaning when, like, everything feels like it's falling apart.
Yes. It's about the personal journeys. So we meet Toru. He's our main character, just living his life, when bam, he hears the Beatles' Norwegian Wood.
And that music, it's like a catalyst, right? Suddenly he's thrown back into his past, a past full of these intense relationships and, like, really profound loss. And I think we've all felt that at some point. You know, that feeling when a song just takes you back, like, boom, you're right back in that moment. All those emotions come flooding back.
It's so powerful. And for Toru, that past is both like beautiful and painful. I mean, especially because of these two women who were so central to that time. Naoko, who is dealing with some pretty deep sadness and loss, and Midori, who's full of life. She's like this whole other path.
That's the heart of Toru's struggle, isn't it? Trying to come to terms with the past, which Naoko kind of represents, while also feeling drawn to a potential future with Midori. He's caught between these two really strong forces. And, I mean, it reflects a conflict that a lot of us probably face in different ways. How do we honor our past without letting it totally define us? It's a tough one.
Right, so it's not just some simple love triangle. It's way deeper. It's about Toru figuring out who he is, where he fits in, and like what gives his life meaning when he's faced with loss. Especially with the idea of suicide, which is like this presence throughout the whole story.
It's heavy stuff. And that brings us to this, like, philosophical thread that runs through the whole novel, this feeling of existentialism. It's like Toru's constantly asking, what's the point of it all?
Okay.
Especially when the world can feel so random and chaotic.
We've got love, loss, searching for meaning. Heavy stuff, for sure. But it's amazing how Murakami uses symbolism to add all these extra layers. Like, it's not just about what's happening on the surface. It's what all these events and images represent on a deeper level.
Exactly. And that's where it gets so interesting for the reader. Take Norwegian Wood, the song. I mean, it's not just a nice song. It becomes the symbol of nostalgia, you know, longing for a past you can't ever really go back to. Like those objects we all have, those places that mean something special to us.
That makes me think about how nature is such a big part of the story, especially the forest. It's like this refuge for the characters, especially Naoko. But it feels like it stands for something else, too.
It's mysterious, right? The forest is a reflection of what's going on inside the characters. Their own personal woods, you could say. You know, like that phrase, lost in the woods, when someone's confused or unsure. That's what it feels like.
And then there are the wells, those dark, deep spaces that pop up all over Murakami's books. It's like he's using them to represent all the stuff we hide deep down. Our fears, our secrets, all those heavy emotions.
Think about the wells in your own life. The places where you maybe hide your true feelings, the places you're maybe a little afraid to face. What are those wells for you, and how do you deal with them?
Yeah, it's like Murakami saying we all have those places inside those wells that we maybe don't want to look at too closely. But what's really interesting is how the story isn't just about going to those dark places, but like how you navigate them, how you find some light, even when it feels pretty dark.
And that's where I think Midori comes in, right? She's got this, like, this energy, this refusal to just give in to sadness. It's like she's this breath of fresh air for Toru and maybe even for us, you know, as readers.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't thought of it quite like that, but that's so true. I mean, Midori really shakes things up. She, like, challenges Toru to be present, to see the good stuff, even the funny stuff in life, even when it hurts.
It's almost like Murakami is giving us these two paths. One is kind of staying in the past with Naoko and maybe getting lost in all that grief. The other is like stepping into the future, even if it's uncertain, with Midori. He doesn't say which is right or wrong. It's more about, like, thinking about what each choice means.
Right, and that goes back to that whole idea of existentialism, right? Toru's not just picking between two women. He's trying to deal with these huge questions like, who am I? What am I doing here? what's the point when everything feels so meaningless? It makes you think, has this book, like, changed how you think about those big questions?
Oh, for sure. I mean, Norwegian Wood, it reminds you there are no easy answers. Life is messy, full of contradictions, but that's okay. It's about accepting that, you know, the not knowing and finding your own way to make sense of it all.
One thing that really hit me was how Murakami gets that feeling of being alone when you're grieving.
Hmm.
Naoko, the way she pulls away from everything, how she can't connect, it's like so real. I bet a lot of readers, especially people who've lost someone, feel that. It's like he's saying, hey, you're not alone in this.
Yeah, it's interesting how he doesn't try to sugarcoat those tough emotions. He's not giving you easy solutions, but he creates the space to just sit with it all, you know? The pain, the confusion, the stuff that just comes with being human.
And maybe that's why this book connects with people so much.
Yeah.
It's honest about the dark stuff, but
Right.
it also shows you that there's hope, there's strengths to get through. It's like he's saying, hey, life's messy and unpredictable, but there's beauty in that mess.
I love that. And the way he uses music to connect those two things, the darkness and the light, it's like this powerful trigger. For the characters, for us reading it, it takes us back to those moments of connection and loss.
Speaking of music, I read somewhere that Murakami's a huge music fan.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so obvious in his writing. It's like he's creating these soundtracks that make the emotions in the story even stronger. In Norwegian Wood, it's the Beatles that add this whole other level. You know, the nostalgia, the sadness.
And it's not just the music, is it? His writing, it's got this rhythm, this flow that pulls you in. It's almost like you're being hypnotized. The way he mixes real life with these dreamlike parts, you're never totally sure what's real and what's not. It's like this mystery.
It's like he's saying, life's not always logical. Sometimes it feels like a dream, and that's okay. That's what makes his stuff so interesting. He's like, embrace the weirdness, the absurdity, find the wonder in the unexpected.
You know, some people have said that Murakami's writing connects to certain philosophical ideas. We talked about existentialism, but there's also hints of Zen Buddhism in there, especially in how the book deals with how nothing stays the same, how everything changes, and how to be okay with that.
Tell me more about that. I'm really curious how that philosophy shows up in the story.
Well, Zen Buddhism is all about how things are always changing, how nothing's permanent, everything's in motion. And that connects to how the book explores loss and change. Like when Toru's friend, Kazuki, dies, it forces him to face how fragile life is, how things can change in a second.
And that ties into the choice Toro has to make between Naoko and Midori. It's bigger than just romance, right? It's about how to live when you know loss is part of it, when change is the only thing you can count on.
That's it.
Yeah.
And Zen Buddhism gives you a way to handle that uncertainty. It's not about pretending the pain's not there or holding on to the past. It's about accepting that things change and finding some peace in this moment.
That's a powerful idea, especially in a book that deals with such tough stuff. It's like Murakami's giving us a way to find comfort even when things are hard, to accept the things we can't change, and to appreciate the beauty of what we have, even if it doesn't last forever.
And that brings us back to that question we've been talking about. What gives life meaning when the world can feel so random and chaotic?
It's a question we all ask, right?
Yeah.
And I like how Murakami doesn't give you simple answers. He makes you explore it through what his characters go through, how they struggle with those big questions, and find their own way to make sense of it all.
And that's the magic of Norwegian Wood. It stays with you. It makes you think, look inside yourself, and maybe even see things differently.
Totally. It's one of those books you can read again and again and find something new each time, some little detail or a deeper meaning you didn't see before.
That shows you how good of a writer Murakami is. He creates these worlds that have so much going on, so many layers. They make you think on a really personal level.
You know, we've been talking about all the serious stuff, the philosophy in Norwegian Wood, but there's also humor in there too. Murakami has this way of combining deep stuff with absurdity, sadness, with funny moments.
You're so right. And that humor is important, right? It keeps the story from getting too heavy. It's a reminder that even when things are tough, there's still room for laughter, for the absurd, for finding joy in the unexpected.
Yeah, those lighter moments give you a break, a chance to breathe before you dive back into the heavier stuff. And that balance is what makes Norwegian Wood so interesting, so hopeful in the end.
I couldn't agree more. It acknowledges the pain, the hard things in life, but it also shows you how strong the human spirit is, how much we can love, connect, and find meaning even when we lose things.
Speaking of finding meaning, what do you think about the ending of the book? I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it yet, but what's your take on what Toru realizes in the end?
It's like this moment where things become clear and unclear at the same time. Toru figures out some big things about himself and where he belongs, but he also knows that his journey's not over. There's still so much to learn, so much he doesn't know.
It's like he's finally found his way. But he knows life's going to keep throwing in curveballs, and he's open to that. The uncertainty, the not knowing.
And that's a powerful message for all of us, isn't it? It reminds us that life's all about growing and changing, and that's what makes it exciting, full of possibilities.
And it goes back to that existential thing we keep talking about. It's not about having all the answers, but being okay with the questions, with the journey itself.
I love that. So, thinking about all this, how do you think this book connects with someone listening right now? What are some things they might really relate to?
Well, one thing is how it explores grief and loss. The way Murakami writes about Naoko's struggles, how she shuts down, it feels so real, so relatable. For anyone who's lost someone, this book might make them feel seen, understood. Like those feelings of sadness, confusion, being alone are normal.
And it's not just about grief, right? It's about identity, belonging, and trying to find meaning when the world feels confusing. Toru's journey, how he tries to make peace with his past and present, how he searches for connection and purpose. That could resonate with anyone who's ever felt lost or unsure about their place in the world.
Exactly. And I think it shows how important human connection is, how relationships can help you get through tough times. Toru's relationships with Naoko and Midori are complicated, even painful sometimes, but they give him a sense of belonging, that he's not alone in all of this.
That's so important, especially now when so many people feel isolated. Norwegian Wood reminds you that even when things are dark, there's light in those real connections with others, those moments where you share something real and understand each other.
And speaking of connection, I think the book also shows you how powerful art can be. Music, literature, all of it. It can help you make sense of the world. The way Murakami uses music throughout the story as this trigger for memories and emotions, it shows how much art can affect us.
It's like art can save you, you
Right.
know? It can be this source of comfort and inspiration, a way to feel connected to something bigger than yourself. And I think that's so important these days when so many people feel disconnected from their feelings and from what's going on around them.
So to all of you listening, I think Norwegian Wood can give you some really deep insights into what it means to be human.
Hmm.
Love, loss, finding meaning. It's a story that might make you think, make you feel comforted, and in the end, give you a new sense of hope and possibility.
And as you think about this book, here's something to consider. If you were to create your own Norwegian Wood, a collection of music, places, things that have deep meaning for you, what would be in it? And how does thinking about those things help you understand your own journey?
Yeah, that's a really cool idea, like building your own little world of memories. It makes you think about how much power certain things have,
Yeah.
to connect you to moments, to people you've loved, experiences that made you who you are.
It's true. And sometimes just looking at those objects, going back to those places, it can bring back so many feelings, help you understand yourself better. You know, it's funny, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about how Norwegian Wood is kind of like a time capsule itself. Like it gives us this window into Japan in the 60s.
Right. You get a sense of the music, the fashion, even the political stuff happening then. Murakami drops us right into Toru's world. We're experiencing that specific time right alongside him.
And it's so interesting how all that cultural stuff is woven into the characters' personal lives. Like, Tor is obsessed with Western literature. It shows how he's struggling with his own identity, stuck between traditional Japanese culture and these Western influences he's drawn to.
It's that feeling of being caught between two worlds. I bet a lot of people can relate to that. Feeling torn between different cultures, ways of life.
Yeah.
Did that resonate with you at all?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it shows how good Murakami is at getting to those universal themes, even when he's writing about a very specific culture. We might not have lived in Japan in the 60s, but those feelings of not fitting in, of searching for somewhere to belong, those are things everyone feels, no matter where they're from or when they lived.
So true. One thing I wanted to mention is how Murakami creates such a specific atmosphere in Norwegian Wood. It's
Yeah.
beautiful, but also melancholic. It's like
Mhm.
you can feel all those unspoken emotions just hanging there.
He's amazing at setting the mood, isn't he? And it's not just through what he describes, it's the pace of the story, the words he chooses, even how the characters talk to each other. It all creates this feeling of like quiet reflection, this lingering sadness.
Yeah, and it fits with all those themes we talk about, the existential searching, the weight of the past, how fragile life is. It's all there, woven into how the story is told.
And I think that's why Norwegian Wood stays with you. Even after you're done reading it, those images, those feelings, they stick with you.
It makes you want to read it again and again, right? Each time you might find something new, a little detail, a deeper meaning you didn't catch before.
Exactly. So, as we wrap up our deep dive here, I'd encourage you to think of Norwegian Wood as a starting point. Murakami has written so many amazing books, each one with its own unique style and deep ideas.
If you like this one, definitely check out some of his others, like Kafka on the Shore, 1Q84, or The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, just to name a few. They all give you a glimpse into Murakami's incredible imagination, that mix of realism and surrealism and those thought-provoking themes we've been talking about.
And hey, maybe one of those will be our next deep dive. If there's a Murakami book, or any book really, you'd like us to explore, let us know.
We love hearing what you're interested in. But for now, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Norwegian Wood. It's been awesome unpacking this amazing book with you.
Yes, and remember, the conversation doesn't stop here. Keep thinking about those questions we talked about. Go back to those symbols and themes. See how they connect to your own life.
Keep reading, keep thinking, and most importantly, keep those deep dives going.